I don't want to walk you through the architecture again. We had a lot of discussions about that. I just want to emphasize for 5G media streaming that we work on release 17. And on the right side, you can see the whole architecture, even including the data collection layer. What we touched is pretty much the whole stack, all the components that you can see here on the left side. Sorry for that. So the application provider has some updates. We have an application server, an application function that was changed. And then on the client side, there was a lot of work for the QE metrics reporting for adding the missing functionality. I'll walk you through the changes on the next slides, and I would also like to show you a quick demo how you can actually reproduce everything that we added so far. So for the interfaces, we are mainly using the M1 interface for the configuration, and then there's an M3 interface between application function and application server for the configuration. And then on the client side for metrics reporting, it will be this M5 interface from the media session handler to the application function. Content is fetched by the media stream handler, which is in our case the media player and exit player from the application server. All right, so what have we done? This is an overview of the different repos again. You know this by now. We have a lot of repos related to 5G media streaming. Basically, all the components I just highlighted, including an Android library for some common functionality. And we also make use of this common shared repository for YAML files. So that's used by the application function and the application server. Everything on GitHub, as you are aware. And this is an overview of the different functionalities. So usually this is the slide I use, and I think I copied this from Richard at some point, what 5G media streaming really gives us. And in the last update of the components, we were focusing mainly on the blue part here, which is why I put the other ones in gray. So network assistance, dynamic policies, and consumption reporting, there was no real change to this with the latest release. But we added, and this is on the next slide, I think, we added the missing QE metrics from the CDPP dash specification. So when we did the open sourcing of the components in the first place, we had support for some of the metrics, but not all. And as part of a student project at the Technical University Berlin, which was carried out by Max, who is unfortunately not here today, but he did the majority of the work. He implemented the missing QE metrics that we will see later on. Okay, so as I said, this is the main change of the current release. So we have the QE metrics that were missing now integrated into the media stream handler and the media session handler. I listed all the metrics here. I don't want to go over all of them, but the list was not short. So rep switch list, MPD information, initial playout delay for media startup, device information, average throughput, and playlist. So all of this has been added. You can find all the details in 26247. What's also important is that we removed the HTTP list metric because my bad, I added that at some point, although it was not in the specification anymore. So we decided to remove this as it's not, as I said, in the spec anymore. For evaluation purposes, so when the client is doing a report, and I'll show you this later, you find this in XML format, which is good for machines, for humans, not that easily readable. So we had a basic UI for evaluation, and Jordi is currently working on a new QE metrics reporting UI. So Jordi, I guess you discovered AI-based coding and how good that is with UIs. I also can confirm that. So we saw the Camera API UI. We see the QE metrics reporting UI now. So Jordi is actively working on that one so that everything that is now available in XML format with the reports can be visualized and can easily be read out by also a human. I mentioned that, so there's a project board if you want to know the details. Then what was also added on top is, and again, AI played a main role here, but we wanted an application that gives you the look and the feel of a commercial streaming application, because for developers, it's okay what we had so far with all these different configuration options. But if you go to a trade show, it's kind of hard to explain what we are doing here. So we came up with this UI. We called it 5G Macflix. And basically, it looks a lot like a commercial streaming application. They kind of look all the same these days. So you have a movie row, you have a TV show row. If you click on one of the contents, you get all the details. I will show you later on where this comes from. Functionality-wise, it's the same. So it's just a different UI put on top of what we had so far. So for configuration, the M8 JSON is still being used. Will be coming up in the example I'm going to show you. And we added also a metadata JSON. So the M8 JSON gives us the provisioning session IDs, gives us, so to say, the entry point for the application. But all this metadata, like the description of the content, the poster images, that is coming now from a metadata JSON. And these two are mapped by name. So that's not ideal. I know that. It's a, let's say, first solution. And I think we had this discussion also some months ago where Richard pointed out that I think it was release 18 or starting with release 18 or 19, I'm not sure anymore. There is something in the specification that would allow us to do this kind of mapping so that we have an ID that we can use for this purpose. So that needs to be added, but at this point, it's the name that does the mapping between the provisioning session and the metadata. All right. So this was it was a change, and then Eric spent a lot of time on improving the application provider management UI. This is a UI that is more or less put on top of what the application function exposes as an interface. So it controls the application function, the M1 interface, and gives you a better interface in order to do all the necessary configurations, create content hosting configurations, create metric reporting configurations, consumption reporting configurations. So everything that we can enable on the application function side can be done via this user interface. So yeah, Eric spent a lot of time on this one with the support by David. And then one thing I added for means of completion, it has been out there for some time, but we also have our own LiveSim2 installation that we can use as an origin for live demos. So basically LiveSim2 allows you to create a Dash live stream out of a Dash VOD content, VOD content. So that's a good approach to really emulate the live stream. I saw some timing issues, to be honest. So if I play our live stream, it plays for, let's say, a minute, and then it runs into some timing issues. That's something we need to investigate. But in general, the setup is done. It runs on our Linode, and you can play a stream from there. Okay, and just to complete before I show you the demo, so Shilin is in the call. Shilin is working on the integration of common media client data. That's a release 19 feature, but it kind of relates to the CDPP-QE metrics. So that's the, I want to say, more up-to-date way to report metrics. CMCD version 2 was just released. We added support for that in Dash.js, by the way. And Shilin is currently working on the integration so that as a first MVP, we report CMCD data from the media stream handler, from the media player to the application server. And from there, we have a small Lua script that actually transfers this data to a dashboard, and then you can visualize it and also look into the details. So if we have time in the end, we can check the status on that. Otherwise, it's all on GitHub. And then finally, we have people from Dolby looking into the coded multi-source media format. So that's also something that will be coming up in one of the next releases of the 5G media streaming components. Okay, and then, yeah, this is important. Thank you to all the contributors. I mentioned Eric, I mentioned Max, I mentioned David, and also Shilin, who have carried out a lot of the work that I just explained. Okay, then the plan would be, let me switch screens, to show you a live demo. And okay, let me figure out. I have too many minutes. All right. So the starting point usually, we need to switch here, is our 5G media streaming examples project. And I have to, so I cannot zoom on the left side. Sorry for that. That's probably not readable. But if you go to the 5GMS examples project, you will find a Docker installation recipe here. All the details are also in the tutorial that we have on the website. So basically, you just need to do some minor configuration changes, and then everything else is started automatically for you. So there's a Docker compose file. I can quickly show you that. In order to start the application server, the application function, the application provider for configuration. And then there's also, and this is new, again, our simple Express server just to host some static files. So basically, if you drop something in this public folder here, it will automatically be available within your network. This is what we use in order to expose all this metadata and the images for the posters in the application. So the only thing I need to do, hopefully, at this point is just start the Docker containers. And then everything spins up. As I said, there's some minor configuration that you need to do. And when this starts, there's an initial config JSON. This was It had a different name before. I think it was called samples.json or something, but we renamed it. So there's some configuration already in here that the application provider portal and also the application function then use to do some configuration for the streams that are available. So you can already see some names here. You can see ingest URLs. You can see a definition of consumption reporting. And if I scroll down, you also see a definition for the metrics reporting. So basically, this is a starting point. It makes it easier so you don't have to configure everything by hand if you want to try out an example. So if I open this now, I end up here. And this is the application provider that Eric has been working on. And it basically shows us what we just configured as a JSON file. So we have 3 different provisioning sessions. The ID is the same, but different content, Big Bug Bunny, our live stream, and also some Tears of Steel content from Axinom. And all the configuration that we had in the JSON file is already reflected here. One thing I would like now to do for demo purposes to show you how you would do a metrics configuration. So you would basically go to metrics reporting here. You would click on create, and then you can define a metrics scheme, a data network name. If you leave that blank, there will be some defaults being used. So I can leave that blank at this point. It will use the CDPP dash scheme in that case. And I just set a reporting interval. So how many reports, in which interval are we sending reports to the server? The sample percentage, so how many of the clients that actually play content should report. And then the sampling period, if you want to combine reports like buffer level, you don't want to derive the buffer level every 200 milliseconds. So you can sample this at a certain interval. And then you can define the metrics that you want to report. And when I tried this out this morning, it's a bit counterintuitive because if you don't select anything here, we will by default report everything. So maybe in the UI, we should either tick everything, or if nothing is selected, we should really report also nothing. So that's something that we need to check again. So I can leave this blank for now. You will see hopefully all the reports. And by the way, HTTP list, we need to remove, Eric. That's not supported anymore. So I create this configuration, and that's all I need to do at this point. So I have this M8 JSON, that is the entry point for the player, for the application, automatically being generated and updated. You can see the 3 entries here that we created. And what I would like to do now is show you how this looks on the client side. So we're going to open Android Studio. And we're also going to, I will try to share my the screen of my Android device. Okay, so this is the Android device that I have on my desk. And then, sorry for that. Then what we need to do is we deploy the media session handler. And the one thing I was hoping for, that the device is not disconnected. Actually, it's not, so that's good. Okay, and then after media session handler, we would start our 5GMS Aware application. And this is the starting point of the 5GMS Aware application now. So it changed a bit compared to the last release. So we have a JSON file that is being used by the application, and it points to an M8 file and to a metadata file. So we need to have these both available now, otherwise we won't see any images and we won't see any content. And as I said, the mapping between those is currently being done via name. So I deployed it as well, and it should give us the application. So you saw that already in the screenshot. And we can now start playing content. So this is the Big Bug Bunny for which we added the metrics collection. Just to show you very quickly, we also have the live sim support. So this is our live sim sample content. As I said, there's a timing issue at some point, so it will break after around a minute, which we need to investigate, but it's playing. And if we play the Big Bug Bunny content, that is also playing. And what we can do now, that it already played for some seconds, we can actually check if we received any metrics reports and consumption reports. So we would go back to our Docker installation. We would refresh this AF reports folder. And there we should see, and actually I already have 2 provisioning session IDs here, so I'm not sure which one is the right one. Let me check. They look same DB. Okay, it's this one. No. DB, yeah, okay, this one. So everything that the client has reported is being saved here in this folder. So we see metrics reports coming in and we see consumption reports coming in. And if we check them, as I said, it's an XML schema. So we see things like the representation switches, the buffer level, MPD information, the playout delay, how long it takes to actually start up, the average throughput, and then also playlist entries. And you will get constant updates on that. So not for every metric, but for instance, for the buffer level, there should be entries in each of the reports. So they are all stored here. So that's great. So everything seems to work. The last step that we now can check is we go to the UI, and I think that was localhost 3000. Yes. So that's the UI, as I said, that Jordi implemented. If you point that to the folder where the reports are stored, and I need a second for that one. It's here. So we do this one. We add the folder here. We apply it, and then we should be able to see our sessions here. And at this point, you see the reports that you saw as an XML in this dashboard. So the client ID, information about devices available, session IDs, MPD information, and then some graphs on the buffer level, representation switches. At this point, there was only one, so there's no real graph, the average throughput, and so on. As I said, this needs a bit of fine tuning, but in general, I think this is great for demo purposes because it gives you really the end-to-end chain for QE metrics reporting and for consumption reporting. Okay, let me check if I forgot anything. Short provider portal, the metrics, the new UI. I think that was it. So yeah, let me see. Are there any questions on that? If not, if you want to try this out, just check out the examples project. The tutorial is also updated. So if you go to getting started, you will find the tutorial with all the required steps that you need to take in order to reproduce what I just showed you.